From whispered tales in coastal towns to shadows that cross forgotten roads, Delaware's small size hides centuries of mysteries and haunting legends. Today, we're bringing 15 eerie stories back to life that still echo through the first state's shores, forests, and historic homes. The Corpse Light of Cape Henlopen. Along the shifting dunes of Cape Henlopen, where the Delaware Bay meets the Atlantic, sailors have reported a strange phenomenon for centuries, a pale blue light that hovers just above the shoreline on foggy nights. Locals call it the Corpse Light, a ghostly beacon that appears when the mist rolls in thick across the water. The legend dates back to the 1700s, when a ship carrying immigrants wrecked off the Cape during a violent storm. The passengers, desperate to reach shore, followed what they thought was a lantern carried by a rescuer. Instead, the mysterious light led them deeper into the churning waters where they drowned. Since that night, the eerie glow returns to mark the anniversary of the tragedy. Lighthouse keepers throughout the decades have documented the light in their logs, describing it as cold fire that moves against the wind. Some believe it's the collective spirit of those who perished, forever searching for the shore they never reached. Others think it's a warning, appearing when dangerous weather approaches. Modern scientists suggest it might be a natural phenomenon like swamp gas or bioluminescent organisms, but those who've witnessed the corpse light remain unconvinced. They describe a feeling of profound sadness that accompanies the sighting, as though the very air carries centuries of grief. To this day, fishermen and beachcombers along Cape Henlopen sometimes spot the spectral glow during autumn storms. They know to keep their distance, respecting both the natural dangers of the coast and the souls that might still be wandering, forever seeking safe harbor in the night. The Catman of Long Cemetery. In the quiet corners of Newcastle County sits Long Cemetery, an old burial ground dating back to the 1800s. The weathered headstones tell stories of Delaware's past, but after sunset, locals say something else prowls between the graves, the terrifying figure known as the Catman, half human and half feline. The Catman is said to stand over 6 feet tall, with glowing yellow eyes that pierce the darkness. His body is covered in coarse black fur, and witnesses claim his fingers end in sharp claws that leave marks on the cemetery's oldest trees. The creature moves silently between tombstones, sometimes on all fours, sometimes walking upright like a man. Legend says the Catman was once a caretaker who lived alone in a small cottage at the edge of the cemetery. After decades of isolation, something changed him, whether through curse, dark magic, or his own growing madness. When he died, his spirit refused to leave, transforming into something that was neither fully human nor animal. Teenagers who've dared to visit the cemetery at night report hearing low growls emanating from the darkest corners of the graveyard. Some claim to have seen yellow eyes watching from behind monuments, while others describe the sensation of being followed by something they couldn't quite see. Perhaps most disturbing are the occasional discoveries of small animal remains placed on certain graves, as though left as offerings or warnings. Local authorities dismiss these as the work of ordinary predators, but longtime residents know better. They say the Catman still guards the cemetery, protecting the dead and challenging the living who disrespect his domain. The phantom ship of the Delaware Bay. Through fog and moonlight, sailors on the Delaware Bay sometimes glimpse a vessel that shouldn't exist. A 3-masted schooner with tattered sails gliding silently across the water. No lights shine from its deck, no crew calls out in greeting, and it leaves no wake as it passes. This is the phantom ship of Delaware Bay, a ghostly apparition that has haunted these waters for over 2 centuries. First reported in the late 1700s, the ghost ship is believed to be the spectral remains of a merchant vessel that went down during a violent winter storm. All hands were lost, but the ship and its crew were cursed to sail eternally, never finding port or peace. Fishermen claim the ship appears most often during the winter months, particularly in January when the winds howl across the bay. Those who've encountered the phantom ship describe an overwhelming sense of dread. The temperature drops suddenly, even in summer, and all natural sounds, waves, birds, even the wind, seem to disappear. Some say they've heard faint cries for help coming across the water, only to find nothing when they change course to investigate. Most chilling are the accounts from those who claim to have seen figures moving on the deck, sailors frozen in time, still performing their duties without realizing they've long since perished. One lighthouse keeper in the 1800s wrote of seeing the ship 3 nights in a row before a terrible storm claimed 5 fishing boats. To this day, captains who've spent their lives on Delaware Bay speak in hushed tones about the phantom ship. Some keep special charms aboard their vessels for protection, while others change course immediately if they spot the ghostly schooner. After all, those who follow the phantom ship too closely might find themselves joining its eternal journey. The Blue Hen Chicken. Not all of Delaware's legends deal with ghosts and monsters. Sometimes the most enduring stories are born on the battlefield. Such is the case with the Blue Hen Chicken, a symbol that rose from the Revolutionary War to become the state bird and a powerful emblem of Delaware's fighting spirit. During the American Revolution, soldiers from Delaware formed a company known as the Blue Hens Chickens. Captain Jonathan Caldwell, their commander, brought with him a breed of fighting gamecocks known for their distinctive bluish plumage and fierce determination in the cockfighting ring. The captain kept these birds with the troops, and their matches provided rare entertainment during the Long War. These blue hens were renowned for their relentless fighting spirit and refusal to retreat, qualities that the Delaware soldiers came to embody themselves. In battle after battle, the Delaware Regiment developed a reputation for exceptional courage and tenacity. True as a blue hen's chicken became a phrase of high praise, recognizing someone with unshakable loyalty and bravery. The men carried this identity proudly, adopting the blue hen as their mascot and rallying symbol. As their reputation grew, other Continental Army soldiers began calling the entire Delaware Regiment the Blue Hens Chickens, regardless of which company they served in. After the war, veterans brought this pride in the blue hen back to Delaware. Though the story began more than 2 centuries ago, the blue hen remains central to Delaware's identity. The University of Delaware sports teams are called the Fighting Blue Hens, and in 1939, the state officially adopted the blue hen chicken as its state bird, a living reminder that even the smallest state produced some of the Revolution's most determined fighters. The Zwanendale Merman. In the coastal town of Lewis, near where Dutch settlers first established the colony of Zwanendale in 1631, a strange artifact once drew curious visitors from across the region. Displayed behind glass in a local shop was what appeared to be the mummified remains of a merman, a creature with the upper body of a human and the lower half of a fish. The specimen, which appeared in the early 1900s, was dark and wizened, with a grimacing face, outstretched arms, and a fishtail where legs should be. The shopkeeper claimed it had been found by a local fisherman after a violent storm, tangled in nets and already dead. For a small fee, tourists and locals alike could view this marvel of the deep. Of course, the Zwanendale merman was actually a cleverly crafted hoax, a Fiji mermaid, similar to those displayed by P.T. Barnum and other showmen of the era. These were typically created by attaching the upper body of a monkey to the tail of a large fish, then treating the concoction to appear ancient and mysterious. But knowing the truth didn't stop the stories from growing. Some claimed that on certain nights, particularly during full moons or fierce storms, the merman's glass eyes would blink or its dried lips would move as though trying to speak. Others insisted they heard singing coming from the display case when no one else was in the room, haunting melodies in a language no human could understand. Eventually, the original specimen disappeared, but tales of the Zwanendale merman persist in Lewis folklore. Some say it was secretly returned to the sea in a private ceremony, while others believe it's hidden away in someone's attic, still trying to communicate with the living. Though the merman itself was fake, the legend lives on, a reminder of Delaware's long relationship with the mysteries of the sea. The Devil's Road. Just a few miles from the Pennsylvania border winds a narrow, tree-lined path known locally as Cossert Road, but those who know its secrets call it by another name, the Devil's Road. This twisted stretch of asphalt seems to exist in a world of its own, where the trees grow at impossible angles away from the pavement and normal rules don't apply after dark. The road cuts through land once owned by the DuPont family, lending credence to whispered stories about secret cult activities and hidden estates where unspeakable rituals once took place. Some claim the trees bend away from the road because they're trying to escape whatever dark energy permeates the ground beneath. Drivers report strange phenomena when traveling the Devil's Road after sunset. Cell phones lose signal, car radios pick up broadcasts from decades past, and GPS devices either fail completely or direct travelers in circles. Those who pull over often describe a feeling of being watched from the surrounding woods, though they never see anyone there. Most disturbing are the accounts of a black vehicle that appears without warning in rearview mirrors. It follows at a consistent distance, headlights glaring, but vanishes if the driver tries to let it pass. Others claim to have seen hooded figures standing motionless among the trees, only visible for a split second in the sweep of headlights. Local police dismiss these stories as urban legends fueled by the road's admittedly eerie atmosphere and sharp, blind curves. But longtime residents know to avoid Cossart Road when possible, especially after dark. They say whatever walks the Devil's Road isn't human, and it doesn't appreciate visitors disturbing its territory. Fort Delaware Ghosts. Standing alone on Pea Patch Island in the middle of the Delaware River, Fort Delaware has witnessed more than its share of suffering. Built in the 1800s, it served as a prison for Confederate soldiers during the Civil War. Over 2,700 prisoners died here from disease, malnutrition, and harsh conditions. Their bodies may have left the island, but many believe their spirits never did. The massive granite fortress now operates as a museum where visitors and staff regularly report unexplainable encounters. Disembodied voices echo through the empty casemates, sometimes whispers, sometimes desperate shouts. Phantom footsteps march in perfect formation down corridors where no one stands. The sounds of coughing and moaning sometimes drift from the former hospital ward. One of the most commonly encountered spirits is a Confederate prisoner who appears in the officers' quarters, still wearing the tattered remains of his uniform. Visitors describe feeling a sudden drop in temperature before he appears, looking gaunt and confused, as though he hasn't yet realized he's dead. Another frequent apparition is the ghost of a Union guard who patrols the ramparts, rifle in hand. Staff members have reported seeing him early in the morning or just after closing, making his rounds as he did in life. When approached, he simply fades into the morning mist. Paranormal investigators consider Fort Delaware one of the most haunted locations on the East Coast. Their equipment captures unexplainable sounds, sudden temperature fluctuations, and occasionally ghostly figures that appear in photographs but weren't visible to the naked eye. For the spirits of Fort Delaware, the war and its suffering never truly ended. They remain at their posts, prisoners and guards alike, bound to the island by duty, death, and unfinished business. The Cannonball House Ghost. In the historic seafaring town of Lewis stands a house with a unique battle scar, a British cannonball embedded in its foundation. The Cannonball House, as it's now known, survived a bombardment during the War of 1812 and has stood watch over the harbor ever since. But according to local legend, not all of its residents have been living ones. Built in 1765, the house has witnessed centuries of Delaware history, and some of that history seems reluctant to fade away. Visitors and staff at what is now a maritime museum report encountering a female spirit dressed in colonial-era clothing. She appears most often in the upstairs bedrooms, seemingly engaged in household tasks from long ago, folding phantom linens or rocking an invisible cradle. Those who've seen her describe a young woman with sad eyes who never acknowledges modern visitors. She goes about her business as though they don't exist, trapped in a moment from centuries past. Some believe she's the wife of a sea captain who never returned from a voyage, forever waiting for a reunion that will never come. Others have experienced the distinctive scent of pipe tobacco in rooms where no one has smoked for decades, or heard heavy footsteps crossing upstairs floors when the building was empty. Museum employees arriving early sometimes find items moved from where they were left the night before, particularly in the captain's quarters. Most disconcerting are the occasional sounds of cannon fire reported by neighbors on perfectly clear nights, especially around the anniversary of the British bombardment. When investigated, no source is ever found, just the lingering echo of a battle long since ended everywhere, except in the memory of the Cannonball House itself. The Witch of Fiddler's Hill. In the rural countryside of Sussex County rises Fiddler's Hill, a gentle slope that seems unremarkable by day. But as darkness falls, locals know to avoid this place where the boundaries between worlds grows thin. For this is where the Witch of Fiddler's Hill is said to wander, still searching for revenge against those who wronged her centuries ago. According to legend, in the late 1700s, a woman named Eliza lived alone in a small cottage near the hill. Knowledgeable about herbs and healing, she kept to herself but would help those in need. When several children in the nearby village fell mysteriously ill, suspicious townspeople quickly blamed Eliza's witchcraft rather than the contaminated well that was the true cause. A mob descended on her home one autumn night, dragging her to the top of the hill. There, they hanged her from an old oak tree despite her protests of innocence. With her final breath, Eliza cursed the land and all who had condemned her, promising to return when the moon was full and the fiddle played. Strangely, after her death, travelers reported hearing fiddle music coming from the deserted hill, though no musician could be seen. Others claimed to glimpse a woman in a tattered dress dancing alone in the moonlight, vanishing if approached. The old oak is long gone, but people still report unusual occurrences around Fiddler's Hill. Electronics malfunction, animals become unusually agitated, and some visitors describe an overwhelming feeling of grief or rage that passes through them like a sudden storm. The most persistent story tells of a thin figure seen walking the perimeter of the hill during October nights, as though patrolling a boundary only she can see. The Witch of Fiddler's Hill, still keeping her lonely vigil after all these years. The legend of Mr. Chew. In the halls of justice in Georgetown, Delaware, some say the scales aren't always balanced by living hands alone. The spirit of Judge Samuel Chew, known simply as Mr. Chew by courthouse staff, is said to still preside over his domain long after his death in the early 1800s. Samuel Chew was a respected jurist known for his strict interpretation of the law and formal demeanor in the courtroom. According to those who've encountered his ghost, these traits have followed him into the afterlife. Courthouse employees working late report hearing the distinct sound of a gavel pounding in empty courtrooms, or catching glimpses of a man in old-fashioned judicial robes disappearing around corners. One of the most common phenomena associated with Mr. Chew is the inexplicable rearrangement of legal documents. Clerks have reported files being moved overnight from one cabinet to another, always in perfect order, but not where they were left. In several instances, crucial documents that had been missing mysteriously reappeared on judges' desks, as though guided by an unseen hand interested in seeing justice done. The ghost seems particularly active during high-profile or controversial cases. Attorneys have described sudden cold spots at the defense table or the unsettling sensation of being watched while alone in the law library. One judge claimed that during a difficult deliberation, he heard a voice clearly whisper a citation for a precedent-setting case he hadn't considered, one that ultimately helped him reach a fair verdict. Though the courthouse has been renovated several times since Judge Chew's day, his presence remains as fixed as the law itself. Most who work there have made peace with their spectral colleague, seeing him not as a haunting but as a guardian of justice who takes his oath of office seriously. Even death cannot release him from his sworn duty. The Silver Lake Serpent. Beneath the placid surface of Dover's Silver Lake, something large and unexplainable has been causing ripples for generations. Known as the Silver Lake Serpent, this aquatic mystery has been spotted by credible witnesses since the early 1900s, yet remains as elusive as the day it was first reported. Descriptions vary, but most accounts mention a dark, humped shape between 15 and 30 feet long that moves with surprising speed through the water. Unlike the jagged motion of alligators or large fish, witnesses describe a smooth, undulating movement more like that of a massive eel or snake. Some reports mention a small head on a long neck, while others focus on the creature's size and the significant wake it leaves behind. The most famous sighting occurred in 1941, when 5 members of a church group having a lakeside picnic observed what they described as a giant snake with skin like an elephant, surfacing briefly before disappearing into deeper water. Their detailed account, given separately to local police, contained remarkably consistent details, despite the witnesses having no opportunity to coordinate their stories. Skeptics point out that Silver Lake, while one of the larger bodies of freshwater in Delaware is too small to support a breeding population of unknown large animals. They suggest misidentifications of common wildlife, floating logs, or even deliberate hoaxes. Yet sightings continue, often from people unaware of the lake's legendary resident until after their encounter. Wildlife officials have never found physical evidence of the serpent, though sonar surveys have occasionally detected large, unexplained objects moving at depth. For now, the Silver Lake serpent remains a mystery. Perhaps the last survivor of a prehistoric species, or simply the most enduring legend in Dover's long history. The headless rider of Blackbird Forest. When the moon rises over Blackbird State Forest, the soft sound of hoofbeats sometimes echoes among the ancient trees. Locals know this isn't just any night rider. It's the headless rider of Blackbird, a spectral horseman who gallops through the forest with an urgency that has lasted centuries. Unlike other headless horseman legends, Delaware's Phantom Rider isn't said to be looking for his missing head. Instead, he's believed to be a Revolutionary War messenger who was ambushed and beheaded by British sympathizers while carrying crucial intelligence to Washington's army. Not even death could stop him from completing his mission. The rider appears as a colonial-era figure on a dark horse, wearing a military uniform from the Continental Army. Where his head should be, witnesses report seeing nothing but empty air, or sometimes a faint, glowing mist. The horse's eyes, however, glow red in the darkness, and its breath steams even on warm summer nights. Hikers and campers in Blackbird Forest have reported the sensation of being followed, only to turn and catch a glimpse of horse and rider vanishing between the trees. Others describe hearing galloping hooves that seem to circle their campsites after dark, never coming closer but never truly leaving either. Park rangers dismiss the stories as a combination of local folklore and the natural sounds of the forest at night. But those who've encountered the headless rider know differently. They say he's still trying to deliver his message, still faithful to a cause long since won, still riding through Delaware's oldest forest on a mission that death itself couldn't terminate. The haunted governor's mansion, standing proudly in Dover since 1790, Woodburn serves as the official residence of Delaware's governor. But according to staff, security personnel, and even some former governors, the historic mansion houses more than just the state's chief executive. Woodburn is home to several ghosts, making it perhaps the only gubernatorial residence where policy discussions might include unseen participants from centuries past. The most frequently encountered spirit is a man in Revolutionary War-era clothing who appears in the dining room during formal events. He never speaks, simply watches the proceedings with apparent approval before fading from sight. Some believe he's former owner Charles Hilliard III, checking to ensure his home is being properly maintained. A more playful presence is the ghost of a young girl in a red gingham dress who's been spotted skipping through the garden and occasionally peering through windows from outside. Children of governors have reported seeing her or hearing her laughter, though adults rarely notice her presence. Perhaps the most famous supernatural resident is the wine-loving ghost. Multiple governors have reported that wine decanters left full in the evening would be found empty by morning, despite security systems showing no intrusions. Former Governor Dale Wolf once tested this by marking the level in a crystal decanter before retiring for the evening. By morning, the level had indeed dropped, though no one had entered the room. Current and former staff tend to speak of Woodburn's ghosts with fondness rather than fear. These spectral residents seem more like caretakers than haunts, historical guardians ensuring that one of Delaware's most important homes remembers its past even as it serves the present. Governors may come and go every 4 years, but Woodburn's original occupants have chosen to stay in residence permanently. The murmurs of Lum's Pond. In the still waters of Lum's Pond, Delaware's largest freshwater pond, something strange happens after sunset. Visitors near the shoreline report hearing voices, whispers, conversations, and sometimes cries for help, seeming to rise from the water itself. These are the murmurs of Lum's Pond, a phenomenon that has puzzled locals for generations. The pond was created in the 1800s when the area was flooded during construction of the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal. Local legend claims that several small farms and homesteads were submerged when the waters rose, with little warning given to residents. Some say not everyone escaped in time, and it's their voices that still call out from beneath the surface. Fishermen tell of hearing their names called by unseen persons, or conversations that sound like they're happening just a few feet away, though no one else is on the water. The voices are clearest on calm nights, especially in late autumn when the air is still and cold. They describe the sounds as distorted but recognizable as human speech, though rarely can specific words be made out. Park rangers and scientists suggest natural explanations: sound carrying across water, wildlife calls, or the wind through the trees surrounding the pond. Yet these explanations don't account for the specificity of many encounters, like the repeated reports of children laughing or a woman calling the same name over and over. Whatever the source of the murmurs, they've become part of the pond's identity. Some visitors come specifically hoping to hear the underwater voices, while others avoid the shore after dark, unwilling to risk hearing what might be calling from below. The waters of Lum's Pond remain placid and inviting by day, but at night, they seem to remember what lies beneath. And sometimes, they want to tell you about it. Patty Cannon and her gang. Not all of Delaware's legends center on supernatural beings. Sometimes, real human monsters leave a deeper mark on local memory. Such is the case with Patty Cannon, America's first female serial killer and the leader of a ruthless gang that terrorized the Delaware-Maryland border in the early 1800s. Patty Cannon and her associates operated a brutal kidnapping ring, capturing free black people and escaped slaves to sell them back into slavery in the Deep South. Her gang's headquarters near Seaford, known as the Cannon House, became synonymous with cruelty and murder. It's believed they killed dozens of victims who resisted or became liabilities, burying the bodies on the property. Her reign of terror ended in 1829 when authorities discovered human remains on her land. Arrested and facing certain execution, Cannon reportedly took poison in her jail cell, cheating the gallows but not justice. In death, her infamy only grew. Almost immediately, locals began reporting strange occurrences around the Cannon House. Lights appeared in windows of the abandoned building. Screams echoed across fields where no one stood. Farm animals refused to approach the property. Some claimed to see Patty herself, pacing the grounds with a lantern or watching from upstairs windows with hollow, hateful eyes. Though the original house is long gone, the land where it stood is still considered cursed by many. Farmers report unusually poor crop yields in those fields, and metal detectors sometimes register anomalies that, when dug up, reveal nothing but disturbed soil. Most chilling are the accounts from descendants of those Patty once targeted, who say they've felt a malevolent presence when passing the site, as though nearly 2 centuries later her hatred still lingers, bound to the land where she committed her crimes. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.